Welcome to this channel. I'm Chigozi Brahma, and this is likely to be the last video for this chemical bonding series. We are going to look at properties of metallic bond. Basically, we want to see the characteristics or the features that are usually induced due to the metallic bond in these metals. So let's get started. Property number 1, metals are good conductors of heat and electricity. In our previous video, we had seen that when you look at the metallic bond, because of this metallic bond, we always have some free stroke delocalized electrons that we are always able to move around because they are not attached to a given atom. So because of these delocalized electrons, obviously we can have our electricity, the flow of charge. So metals are actually good at conducting heat and electricity. That's why whenever you are trying to boil something, maybe in an aluminium saucepan, you always have to hold it with an insulator because they tend to easily become hot because they are actually good conductors of heat. So silver is the best heat conductor, while also maybe something to note, copper is a better conductor than aluminium in terms of heat. So metals are good conductors of heat and electricity. So whenever you have electricity around, don't try touching a metal because it could be conducting that same electricity. Property 2, metals are lustrous. This is a property that talks about how shiny a substance might be, especially because of its ability to reflect light. So metals tend to reflect light. If at all they tend to be dull because they are normally a bit gray, in this case, if they are freshly cut, if you cut it with a knife, some are not so hard, they can easily show you how shiny they are. They tend to be lustrous. For example, you can see silver, it is shiny, gold, it tends to shine, and so on. Even copper tends to shine. So metals are basically lustrous to a larger extent. Property 3, metals are usually hard and strong, and with this property it means they can easily withstand stress. They can't easily be affected by strong forces. That's why when you look at iron in form of steel, we can easily use it in construction of things like bridges and maybe long storage houses. So metals are basically hard, with the exception of some few soft metals that can easily be cut by even a knife, like potassium and sodium. These are actually soft, but most other metals, like in this image, it can be quite strong and hard, and for that case it can't easily bend, it can't easily extend, and so on. So this is a nice property for metals because in construction we can always look up to them to produce good structures. Property number 4, metals are ductile, meaning they can be drawn into wires, thin wires. So when you look at silver and gold, these are the most ductile metals. So all metals, whenever you try to apply some force on them, their atoms will tend to slide past one another, creating a thin layer of these atoms. As such, you can easily create these thin wires of metals. That's why, as you can see here, we have our copper wire because it could easily be stretched. That's why we can say that metals are actually ductile. This is just a terminology to mean they can be drawn or made into thin wires. Property 5, just like we have seen metals are ductile, they are also malleable. This is another property talking about how these metals can be hammered into sheets. Obviously, hammering, we are meaning heat. You get something strong and put some good force on them. So because the atoms can easily slide past one another, they can also roll past one another, creating a structure like this, aluminium foil. So aluminium foil is made because aluminium can easily be turned into a sheet. That's why we are even able to make saucepans made up of aluminium. So metals are malleable. It's also a good property that is essential in our day-to-day lives. Number 6, metals have high densities. We know that density is equal to mass over volume. So when you look at the mass per unit volume of most metals, they are actually high compared to other covalent substances like water. So when you look at iron, copper, these are relatively high densities. However, sodium and potassium, maybe with cesium, these ones tend to have low densities. But the general trend will be that most metals have relatively high densities compared to other substances. Point 7, metals have high melting points and boiling points. They are also quite high. When you look at metals, we had seen that metals have very many electrostatic forces of attraction. And because of these electrostatic forces of attraction between the metal cation and the cloud of electrons, you need to apply a lot of energy for them to melt. So we shall always have high melting points, and in the same way we shall have high boiling points. So in that case, we shall see that actually the boiling points of these metals are actually similar to ionic compounds and not similar to covalent compounds. However, we have some metals like mercury which have low melting points. That's why we shall always have our mercury being a liquid at room temperature, because it tends to have a low melting point. So when you look at these metals here, the melting points are quite high. However, we shall see that some group 1 metals like sodium and potassium, they actually have low melting points. So group 1 and the ones below, for them they tend to have low melting points. But this does not mean that the general rule of thumb for metals is that some may have low melting points. No, actually most metals have melting points, just like this point has been stated. Point 8, metals are sonorous, meaning they tend to produce a ringing sound. So when you somehow hit them, they tend to produce some sound. That's why they are normally used in bells and violins. So when you somehow play with metals, get something and you hit them hard, you'll find that they'll produce some ringing sound. So metals are good at that. Unlike non-metals, they may not produce that kind of sound. So the term sonorous means they tend to produce a ringing sound when hit. With hit we are meaning HIT. We shall end with our top 3 questions. Name the metal which is the best conductor of electricity. Remember, we are looking at the giant atomic structures, and we said actually diamond is the best at conducting electricity. But what about in terms of metals? Which metal do you think is the best in terms of conducting electricity? Let me know in the comment section below. Aluminium is a better conductor of heat than copper. Do you think this statement is true or false? Why are cooking utensils made of metals? That could be self-explanatory, but still give it a try. Thanks for watching. If you find these videos helpful, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe so that you don't miss any of our recent uploads. So this is likely to mark the end of our chemical bonding series. We shall try and start up a new series in our next video. Be well.